going to make the whole street massacre look like a Sunday picnic. And these letters were so truly horrifying that they passed special legislation to keep him in jail for the rest of his life. With that, he started to self-mutilate, and he cut off all sorts of bits and pieces. We won't go into too much detail, but usually the men in the group get tears in their eyes when they think about what he actually did, cut off. And he cut it off 3 times altogether. The first 2 times, they sewed it back on. The 3rd time, it was too badly mutilated, they sort of had to throw it away. He used to smuggle a razor blade into his cell under his tongue, and he'd use that razor blade to commit all sorts of atrocities on himself. One day, he actually put a slit in his side, which he could actually slide his hand into like a pocket. So as I said, he really was an amazing man. So he was obviously sent here to jail for psychiatric treatment. And while he was here, there was a strike by the psychiatric nurses, and the place was being looked after by volunteers. So this night, Gary Webb smuggled a toothbrush into his cell, which was this one here. Now, you may wonder how he smuggled the toothbrush in, and because they were naked, of course, in that era when they were put in their cells. But I can tell you this, you wouldn't want to use it again afterwards, okay? I can tell you that. So he used the toothbrush to pick away the mortar from around some of the bricks in his cell. The mortar in this place, by the way, was very poor quality because they couldn't get cement up here when it was built. The bully gears wouldn't bring it up because it was too heavy. So there was no cement available, so the mortar was very, very poor quality. So he dug away the mortar, pulled out the bricks, climbed through the hole into the cell next door, which was empty and open. He knew that, of course, so he walked out. He walked up the stairs and he climbed right up to the top of the building. And you might have to come back a little way, but up in the top left-hand corner there, you can see a whole heap of loose bricks. Can you see those up there, up in the top left-hand corner there? Gary Webb is responsible for those. He climbed up there and used his toothbrush once again to remove the mortar from around some of the bricks. Once you get the first one out, the rest just pull out very easily. He climbed through the hole, kicked his way through the slate tiles onto the roof, and took up residence on the roof. Now, the volunteers realised by this time what was going on. They were a bit slow on the uptake, but they realised what was happening. And they panicked, of course. So they rang the head nurse. I guess he was on strike as well. I really do not know. But I gather he was at home at the time. They rang the head nurse and they said, "He's up on the roof. What the hell are we going to do?" And the head nurse, I guess trying to calm them down, said, "Look, don't worry about him. He's naked, it's raining, it's cold. He'll be back in a minute. Don't worry about him." And he was back in, but nearly 3 days later, he sat up there on the roof for nearly 3 days, and he was naked, it was raining, and it was cold. So he really was an amazing man. I'm told that he poked his head through the hole up there at the end of the time and yelled out, "What's for dinner?" He must have approved the menu because he came back in. They finished his treatment and he was sent back to Pentridge to see out the rest of his sentence. But when he got back to Pentridge, he started to swallow metal objects, including razor blades, I believe. And so they had to operate on him at least a couple of times to remove these metal objects. But after his last surgery, he smuggled a ballpoint pen into his room, and he used that pen to poke around in the surgical wound. He must have hit the aorta, the main artery in the stomach there, because he created the hemorrhage that they just couldn't stop in time, and he bled to death, which was the end of a very sad, very troubled life indeed. Lots of people say that everything he did was a cry for help, and I suppose it was. In fact, I've no doubt that that was the case. Although if you ever speak to a former Pentridge warder, he will tell you a different story altogether. They had no time for him at all. All right, we'll move along. You can have a look in the doorway here and see the patch on the wall where they patched up where he pulled it. Looking over the floor.
Sorry, put it down.
Come on, buddy. I was just going to mention that this was Pierre Hamoncel just here, the Frenchman I mentioned earlier on. As I said before, he was a very, very violent man. And when he first came to jail, one of the first things he did was to pull apart a wooden box bed with his bare hands and use the pieces as a weapon. He did that a couple of times, so they took away his wooden box bed from him, and the engineers up at Arundel built him an all-steel bed, which was bolted to the floor, and he couldn't pull that one apart. He was a trained kickboxer, so he was a very dangerous man out in the exercise yard out here. And I believe he would also put little sticks between his fingers, little short sticks about that long, and then he'd kind of walk up and punch someone in the face with these little sticks sticking out of his fist. Also, he'd be smoking a cigarette, and he'd walk up to someone as though he was about to talk to them, and then he'd try and stab them in the eye with the burning cigarette. He really was a very, very dangerous man. But he must have been suffering absolute mental hell, because he used to sit on his bed and scream for a good bit of the night. And his problem was that he was suffering from advanced syphilis, and it had destroyed his brain, because that's what happens in the final stages of syphilis. It actually decays the brain. So you cannot begin to imagine what hell he was living in. I always say to everyone on the tours, no matter what your lives are like, they are infinitely better than the people in this place, believe me. This is the exit from the cell block, and as you can see, originally there were 4 separate exits from the cell block, and back in the jail days, they used to lead out into 4 separate exercise yards, separated by bluestone walls, so that they could separate prisoners as required. But sometime after it became jail ward, they pulled those bluestone walls down and more or less turned it into one big exercise yard. Come on, have a look.
Digging it up. We'll stay up.
Yeah. I'm telling you about that.
Oh, fuck that job, so.
Right, folks, this is the exercise yard. This is where the patients spent most of their day. We're digging this up because these big trees, their roots had started to lift the surface up, and it really was quite dangerous for people walking around, especially the ghost tours at night. So we've ripped it all up, and we're going to actually create a garden in there so that the trees can live there quite happily. This is the guard tower above the exit from the cell block that I mentioned earlier on. So that's the only original guard tower in the place. So back in the jail days, there would have been a guard on duty up there. There would have been a guard in the tower down in that corner, and that's the tower we had built up in that corner there. As you can see, they did a fantastic job of that because they would have taken the bluestone and that sort of thing. The heritage people who control these things would not allow us to use any modern material building that tower. We have to use material which were available when the jail was built. It's actually got a really sheet roof, because that's what they would use back in the jail days. And I guess that's a fair way to explain it. This is the therapy unit here. That was built in the early 1950s, and that was a spot where the patients went for good until the good citizens of Ararat started to complain. I can't imagine why. And so they had to dig cesspits then to take the vessel. That wooden building you see just there, that's a former Victoria police cell. They started building those back in the 1850s. With the ever-expanding colony of Victoria, they couldn't sort of keep up with the police stations in these cells, so they prefabricated these and they were sent out to wherever they were needed in Victoria to act as the police cell. But the reason we've got one here, and we discovered that one recently, only a couple of months ago, over in Bendigo. So we went over there, made the owner an offer, which he accepted, and we transported it back here and had it lifted over the wall. But we wanted one because they used to have anything up to 20 of these police cells round the inside of this exercise yard here to take the overflow of prisoners from the main cell block. There were only 28 cells in the original cell block, and we are told that the greatest number of prisoners on record as being held in this jail at any one time when it was a jail was 210. Now that's well over 7 to a cell, and that would have been absolutely disgusting, to put it mildly. So they had to put these wooden cells around the inside of the exercise yard to take the overflow. And I believe they were still here, or at least some of them were still here when it became J Ward, because J Ward also had a bit of an overflow. And we understand that they only left when they built the west wing there, which would have taken their place. That gateway that you see over there is obviously
cricket stumps on the wall.
Added at a later date, but it actually leads out to a vegetable garden with a high cyclone wire fence around it, and the very trusted patients were allowed out there to work in the vegetable garden, which they really enjoyed doing, but only the very trusted ones, because if you handed a pitchfork to half the people in this place, you'd be handing them a lethal weapon. Okay, we'll move over to the wall over there, because that's where the 3 men who didn't make it out of our jail now reside.
Brenda House used to work at Arabella. I think she's still
These were the outdoor toilets for the later J Ward. These were the patient toilets, and you can see they were open fronted so that the staff could keep an eye on them. These were the staff toilets here. Right, so this is where the 3 men are buried who were hanged here at Ararat Jail. Back in the days when they hanged people as part of the prison system, part of the punishment was that you had to spend all eternity within the jail walls in unconsecrated ground. The family weren't allowed to claim the body for burial. They would be taken down from the gallows, brought outside, dropped in the hole, which was already dug. There was no coffin. They were covered up with quicklime so that the theory was they would break down very quickly, and that was it. They just simply ceased to exist. As far as the government were concerned, they no longer existed. There was no plaque to show who was buried here or anything of that nature. The Friends of J Ward have put these plaques here to show who is actually buried here. These arrow marks actually indicate the grave sites. There's one there, and one there. And the only reason they put those arrow marks in the wall, as far as I'm aware, is so that they didn't dig up the previous bloke when they were digging the hole for the next one. Because this was just a gravel surface, of course, back in those days, and there was nothing to indicate, where the graves actually were. We've been told by a pathologist, by the way, that those skeletons would be absolutely perfectly preserved because of the lime that they're in. So perhaps one day we should dig them up and put them on display, but it might be a bit soon just yet. Yes, I understand that. I'm joking, by the way. This wall is quite intriguing. See how smooth these bricks are compared to the ones up above. And the reason is, this used to be the last wall at the end of the day that had the sunlight on it, so it acted like a heat bank. And the prisoners in earlier times and the patients in later times would lean up against this wall to warm up before they went back inside to their nice cold cells. And they would form the bricks quite smooth just by standing up against them. That slot in the wall there was probably done by one of the patients too, because as you can imagine, they had all the time in the world to scratch things into the wall with a bit of metal they found, or a bit of rock, or a nail or something. And if you were to take the time to walk right along that wall over there, you would find a couple of handprints where they'd gone around their hand, put their handprint in the wall. There's a bunch of grapes over there somewhere, which is really quite artistic, quite well done. And amongst other things, there is a rectangle about that sort of size with another smaller rectangle inside it. And when the nursing staff asked this patient why on earth he was scratching this rectangle in the wall with another little rectangle inside it, he said, "Well, I never get any mail, and I thought if I made myself a letterbox I might just get some mail." And I thought, that's sad, isn't it? The poor old bugger didn't get any mail, and he thought if he made himself a letterbox, you just never know. All right, we'll move along. We'll head through here.
34. Said that. That's right, Jay.
There's nothing much to tell you about in this area. That's the other guard tower, the opposite one to the one we first looked at. This is the only spot you can sort of see the whole cell block in one go. You like that? Okay, but what